my God. We have an amazing guest on today. Her name is Jacquie Norton. She's a mom. She is a podcast host to the Mama Jac Podcast.
She's a Squamio, in case you really want to know.
But we think you should listen to her story. It is so insightful, whether you are a parent, whether you want to be a parent, if you know someone who's a parent. She gets very raw and to the nitty-gritty of what postpartum depression truly looks like, which honestly, I think as clinicians, it's not even widely talked about on our end. So it's great to hear personal stories and just some level of insight to what this experience truly looks like and what you could do as a friend, as a family member, as just somebody who's a decent human being. Welcome to the Shrink Show. So Jacquie, share, because Angie hasn't listened to your podcast, and share a little bit about just, first of all, your kiddos, like ages and where they are today, and then backtrack to when you first had your first kiddo and what was going on.
I also would like to preface, I have not listened to your podcast because I don't care. It's simply because I am a mom of 100.
I just ignore my kids and play a podcast, so balance.
Maybe I need to find more of that.
My podcast, I made it because I was in a place where I had heard a lot of parenting advice that was good, but didn't completely tell the truth about everything. And I wanted a space where moms could come that were in turmoil or that were going through hard shit or that had been through hard shit, and they could be like, we hear what this person is saying. My guests are very inspirational. Oh my God. The stuff that they talk about is just like, I don't know how they got through it, and it's really about shedding light on other people's stories as well as mine, because I had a super tough journey with postpartum depression. My kids right now are almost 4, and I have a 20-month-old. So she'll be 2 in October. And it was crazy. It was a crazy journey with both of them. Very different for both of them, but crazy journeys for both of them.
Did you know you had postpartum like right away, or was that something that somebody had to point out to you? Like, how did that look? Because I feel so often there are moms that have it, don't realize, or that somebody pointed it out and they're like, no, how did that look for you?
So I had depression and anxiety and PTSD before I even had kids. And I was on medication for it. And then I went off of it because I didn't have kids. So I could work out and eat healthy and do all the things that you can do when you don't have kids, Well, it's a lot easier when you don't have kids. And so I went off of all of my medication. And when I got pregnant with my son, my hormones just started going nuts. And now after this, I've realized a lot of my depression, postpartum depression, anxiety. I mean, I didn't quite get to postpartum psychosis, but I was having really weird, terrible thoughts. It all stems from hormonal stuff with me. And so I was prepared and I heard about baby blues. So with my son, it was very much so during the pregnancy. My husband was gone. He works in film. So he was in Mexico for 3 months of my pregnancy. And then when he came back, he started an overnight job. So I barely got to see him. I had a short cervix with him. So at 32 weeks, I was on bed rest, which isn't called bed rest anymore. It's like limited movement or something. And
oh my God, they changed the verbiage?
Yeah. I don't think it's not considered bed rest unless you literally have to lay in bed. Like they want you to still move, but they don't call it bed. At least in California, they weren't calling it bed rest anymore.
Oh, so just seems so much simpler to just keep it in bed rest.
I wish they would have called it that so I could have just laid in bed and watched TV and been like, no, I'm on bed rest. You have to do everything. But yeah, so it started a little bit with that. And I was like, well, it's normal. I'm lonely because my husband's not here. My family's across the country. That's when my friends started to back off a little bit. I was just alone. What got me through that pregnancy was actually my husband gave me the order of Marvel movies to watch in order. So I went through all the Marvel movies and I watched them all in order when I was on bed rest. And also we had mold in our apartment and we had to move when I was 8 months pregnant. So I had to pack everything up while he was working nights. Thankfully, while I shouldn't have been moving, right? Because I was on bed rest. And
it was limited movement. Come on.
So I had to do all of that too, pretty much by myself. I had a friend come over and her husband now, and they did my whole kitchen, which is the biggest part, right? Which was so amazing. But it was I felt like I was going through it all by myself. And he was there. He would text me. He would call me. He did everything he could do. And he had to make money because we didn't know that I would be on bed rest. And I'm a hairstylist, or I was at the time. So I didn't have anything to bounce back on. I didn't have paid maternity leave at all. So he had to be at work. And I had my baby, and it was a weird moment, right? It wasn't all the like joy that I thought it would be. So right at the beginning, I was like, okay, this is probably baby blues. My kid had to go to the NICU for 3 days. There was gurgling in his chest. He had fluid in his lungs. God, my heart goes out to NICU mamas because even those 3 days were like horrific to me. Especially, I was there for 2 of them, and then the one they sent me home, and they're like, go home, get some sleep. And we're like, yeah, right. He also came at 37 weeks. So we weren't absolutely prepared, and we just moved. So it was literally, we had just moved. I think we were in the place a week and a half or 2 weeks when he came. So it was very nerve-wracking with him. I was the mom that we had a bed in his room beside his crib, and I was up every like 10 minutes, I swear, like, is he okay? Is he okay? Not to mention, I also tried breastfeeding, but they had to give him a bottle in the NICU. And so I was pumping, and he never wanted to latch. I tried for 2 months straight. I would wake up, try to latch him for 15 to 20 minutes. He would cry. So I would make him a bottle, and then I would let him sit up because they told me he had to sit up for 15 minutes, and I would pump while that was happening, then go back to bed and wake up like an hour and a half later to start the whole process over again.
Oh my God. Jacquie, I did that exact same thing with my firstborn, who was also born in June or July, like as a cancer. The same fucking thing. And you're right. It's so fucking stressful when they're like, go home, mom, go home. I'm like, I'm not going home. My baby's here. Like, where am I going to go? Like, my child is here. I'm going to stay with my child.
Yeah, they had to push me out. They literally had to push me out. And I mean, I have a friend that she had triplets, and they were in the NICU for like 5 months, and I don't know how the hell she did it. I would have went crazy. And they were in 2 separate hospitals too. Insane. But anyways, so baby blues started, and I would just cry for no reason. Literally all the time. Like, just start crying, or like, you know, the normal, what I thought was normal. I think it's still pretty normal. Like, you wake up, you're tired. My husband, when he had weekends, he was still working nights. It was perfect because he would wake up, but I'd still have to get up to pump, but he would at least feed the baby and I could go, you know, back to bed. So I would wake up and just cry and cry and cry. RuPaul's Drag Race got me through both of my nighttime journeys. Like, I literally watched everything they had the first time pumping through the night, and then I didn't watch it until I got pregnant and had my second child. So I had a whole cluster of seasons to watch again. And it did help me. That was my only saving grace, was RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm telling you, it was incredible to watch and very funny and uplifting for me. But I didn't want anybody to touch my baby. I was very much so like, wash her hands. My cousin came over with a cold, and she wore a mask. She was just visiting from out of state because, you know, no one was around. I mean, my mom flew out the 2 weeks after I had him, and she stayed for 3 weeks. But again, it's like they want to hold the baby. And I feel like at that moment, it's you need to take care of the mom. Like the mom wants to take care of the baby, just aid with that. Like make the meals, make this. But I was like trying to be power mom. I could do it all. I can make all of you breakfast. You're visiting me, I got you. I'm going to clean the house. I'm going to do that. And it wore me out. And I was so depressed every time I learned that every time you cut a pump or you're breastfeeding and you cut a feed, your hormones fluctuate. So I would be fine, getting better, cut a pump, boom, down again. And I'm talking like, didn't want to talk to anybody. I was a hairstylist. I would turn myself on for the 2 days I worked. Luckily, I could jam my clients within 2 days, and that would be it. Like my husband got nothing. I had no sex drive at all. And I'm talking, even having my daughter, I still didn't have a sex drive. I was forcing myself. It hurt so bad after I had my son. I had a grade 3 tear, and I even waited like a month and a half, and it was still horrifying to have sex. So I just did not. And then beyond that, I was even like, am I not attracted to my husband anymore? I was thinking of like other men. And I was like, no, I just don't want to do it. Even women, I just don't want to do it. Like nothing. And, you know, everybody was like, I was freaking out over everything, every little thing. COVID happened and I started drinking a lot, and then my body just shut it down. Like I could not drink anymore. I would have panic attack after panic attack. I wouldn't sleep for 2 days. Like it was insane. And I started getting very resentful towards my child because I was so depressed, and I was like, I'm making everybody else miserable. I wish I couldn't be here, but I have this kid now and I have an obligation to him, and I don't want to leave him without a mother. So I can't do anything about it. Like I just have to be here and be miserable. And I had a therapist. I didn't want to go back on medication because the medication they had me on before made me like a zombie, which is why, and it's what they give you when you're breastfeeding. It was Zoloft. So I didn't want to go on medication, and I was just in this horrible funk. And by the time I was done breastfeeding, I decided I didn't want everyday medication. I just got Xanax for panic attacks and anxiety attacks. And then a month or two later, I got pregnant. So I didn't have that anymore. And it was horrible. My second pregnancy, oh my God, I literally was depressed through probably 3 months after I conceived my son, through a year after my daughter was born, a little over a year after my daughter was born. And I consider it postpartum because it never ended. So I was pregnant with her. We were moving. Pandemic, full force, right? So we were in Los Angeles, and we were like, listen, we could stay here. We would do fine in our careers. Do we really want to send our kids to public Los Angeles schools? Because there's thousands of kids in those schools. They're going to get lost in the system. Or you pay over a mortgage to put them in private school. And then on top of that, they can't even play on the streets because you're in a huge city. Like, it's just like so much. So film industry, huge in Atlanta. We decided to move to Atlanta. Well, around the same time we decided that, my mom was diagnosed for a second time with breast cancer, and this time it was stage 4. So I told my husband, I was like, I want to go stay with my mother. I'm pregnant. I can't really leave the house anyways. I'll only be going for appointments. I want to take care of her. I feel like I'm not working anyways because of COVID and me being pregnant. My husband didn't want me to work. So, which, you know, everyone was scared at the time. Like, of course, there was no vaccines at the time, which we'll get into that later, part of my story. And so I went there. We went to Pittsburgh, me and my son and my husband, but he was living in LA and he was gone 85% of the time. So I was taking care of my sick mom and my son, who was getting sick all the time because he was at home with me. And by the time that it would have been time for play dates, you know, like 8 months old, 9 months old, COVID happened. So he didn't have any like really playtime with any kids. So he was playing with his cousin and he was sick all the time. You know, when they get sick, when they play with kids, like it's just what happens. And so I was getting sick the whole time I was pregnant. Pregnancy, like, oh my God, I had the worst. I couldn't eat anything. The only things I wanted to eat, I'm not joking, that didn't make me sick was pizza and cake the whole time. I only gained 65 pounds, which a lot of people are like, oh, 65 pounds. I'm like, no, with what I was eating, that was great.
I mean, I'm not even mad about it. Fucking pizza and cake, actually pizza and ice cream is my go-to whenever I'm sick. Like I'll order a pizza and my husband will be like, oh, not feeling well today. Yeah, I am unwell. I am unwell. Pepperoni pizza right now. Yeah. I love it.
It was just really hard without him. And there were a lot of crying nights. And my son was going through some weird regression, which had a lot to do with his dad not being there, him being in a new place, you know, all these things that I was dealing with on top of, you know, being pregnant. And
your emotions, he feels your emotions very much. So just trying to process your emotions and his are like, whoa.
I feel so bad for my son because I feel like the first couple years of his life, he did not get the best part of me. And I'm in my healing process, I'm learning that, you know, it's okay. And I'm there for him now. And you can't take back what already happened, right? And I'll get into that towards the end more. But there was a lot of screaming. There was a lot of, I don't, you know, hit my kids, but I did get his butt a couple times because I lost my patience very, very easily with him because I was pregnant and, you know, alone pretty much. Like my parents helped, but they could only help so much, especially my mom being sick. The COVID vaccine came out for pregnant women while it was like I was 14 weeks pregnant, I think. And we were back and forth about it. Should I do it? Should I not do it? This is scary. You know, they recommended my mom do it because she was going through chemo and everything. And I felt like, you know, it was safe because everybody else had gotten it. And I decided to go for it. And I actually made that journey on TikTok. And holy crap. Did it end up on the side of TikTok that you did not want to end up on? Like, I remember somebody commented, congratulations, you just killed your baby. Somebody was like, if you wanted to have an abortion, maybe you should have just done that instead of getting a COVID vaccine. Like all of this shit that people were saying. It's my most viewed video on TikTok. And it's like, I deleted a lot of the bad comments. So you can't see them now because the reason I made it was because it was such a hard decision for me and there wasn't a lot of information out there. So I wanted to be like, this is my journey. I'm going to show you I'm 14 weeks pregnant. I got my second dose at 14 weeks. Maybe, no, I think I got my first dose. Anyways, I wanted to show my whole journey. My baby's okay. What's happening? You know, all this stuff. After she was born and she had her genetic condition, she has a genetic condition. People were like, oh, is that from the vaccine? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I even asked the doctor that because I was concerned. Genetic conditions come from when the baby is actually made.
Genetics.
So she already had a genetic condition.
Wait a minute. So genetic conditions, they come from genetics, not from vaccines. I just want to be clear. Genetic conditions, right? Is that what you're saying? That they come from your genetics, yes. Not from okay. I just want to make sure I'm fully understanding.
Yes. So I had her, and I remember this postpartum depression was very different, very different. It wasn't sadness and crying. It was rage. I got home. My parents smoke. Okay. I asked them, could you please not smoke inside? That's the one request I had. I was only living there for a month more. Please just don't smoke inside. This is a newborn. So they were smoking in the basement. Whatever. You know, I had to take what I could get. I was there. We decided we didn't want to leave yet. I didn't want to drive to Georgia with a newborn. You know, at least a month old, I felt like was even pushing it for that drive. So I got home and my dad was helping me out of the car and he had a cigar in his mouth. And my husband freaked out and I freaked out. And my mom said to me, she was like, well, this is his house. And I remember picking up a dinner plate and throwing it across the room and just being like, like I was purple. I was so mad. And my child was sitting in front of me, like my 2-year-old at the time. And he just goes, Mommy, and started to cry. And my heart just shattered. And that was only the beginning. My husband ended up getting COVID with my son when my daughter was 2 weeks pregnant. And I wonder why. Some people might say the vaccine. Some people might say God. I'll let everybody make that decision on there. So he was isolated. We couldn't isolate. We didn't find out my son had it until 5 days later. So it had already, done its damage. I was literally sleeping with a mask on just in case I got it. I didn't want to give it to my daughter. I was like, my breast milk is the best thing for her. I pumped with both of my children. So, I was just trying to give her as much as that as possible. I was freezing it at the time because I overproduce. I actually slowed it down with her, but with my son, I had so much milk. It was just insane. So I was marking it like maybe COVID, So I figured even if I didn't get it, I probably got some of it. My son or my husband was holding my daughter the day he took his positive COVID test. So I was just like, if it's in the future, if she gets it, I want her to have as much antibodies. I probably got a little bit of it in me if my husband had it. So that was a worry, and also a 2-week-old that I was stuck being up with my son. I don't know why we didn't just throw my son in the room with him because he wouldn't have stayed. He was a toddler and he was drooling everywhere. My son drooled until he was almost 3 years old. I don't know if it's his mouth, whatever, but everywhere, it was just insane. It was horrifying. So once we got over that, it was my birthday. And I think 3 days after my birthday, we drove to Georgia and I had no one. So we unpacked the house. We were fighting a lot. I honestly believe my husband had a little bit of postpartum and he was new to the city and he wasn't getting a lot of work, which happens. And we moved in November and the film industry slows down in November and we were having a lot of issues. Did you want to ask something?
I did, because actually, as you're talking, I thought, thinking back, my husband had adjustment, a lot of times in therapy, we call it an adjustment disorder, like you might have depression or you might have an adjustment disorder with a depressed mood. So an adjustment disorder with a depressed mood would be like your dad died and you're just really struggling to find your way in things. And so I'm thinking about, like you had said, you think your husband had postpartum. Is there a word? Is there a phrase? Is there some way to describe that for men? Because my husband, it is an adjustment.
They've recently started diagnosing men with postpartum.
Yeah. They can't. And I wish they would call it postpartum. Personally, I do. I wish that they wouldn't. I wish it would be called something different, because I feel like postpartum very much describes hormones, very much describes a much bigger picture than the adjustment. And I'm not dismissing it by any means. That is still very difficult, but it is a different picture than postpartum. But I just wondered if they had a phrase. So if the DSM folks are listening, could you please change postpartum for men?
No, a quick Google search says paternal postnatal depression.
Oh, there you go.
So PPND, because of course we abbreviate everything in the field. Paternal postnatal depression.
I mean, could they call it something easier, like
PPND?
Oh, okay.
I know.
Anyway, I'm so sorry, Jackie. It got ADHD. That
No, but I like that you mentioned that, because we do have dads who listen, and it's fair, I think, for dads to know that diagnosis does exist, and it's fair for the moms or any potential new moms to know it exists, because it's a dialogue that it affects both people. It's not just the mom's issue.
Yeah. Right. It's hard. Babies are hard. It's hard. Oh my God, I'm still figuring it out. Anyway, go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, so we got to Georgia and things just got worse and worse. My husband would work and I would just be so stressed out, like beyond stressed. And then, I found Peanut and I was talking to other moms and I was like, oh, it's normal. But it wasn't normal because I was having thoughts of, again, like I would be sitting on my back patio and we're on the 3rd floor. We have an apartment in Atlanta right now. And I'd be like, God, I need to just fucking die for this shit. Like, it was that real. Like, I was just like, again, I'm miserable. No, everybody would be better without me. I kept thinking, like, my husband would be sad, but he'd get over it and he'd find somebody to take care of the kids. He's a good guy. He would find a good, like, I literally was convincing myself to do this. And, again, with my kids, I was like, but I don't want them to grow up without me. Like, and that had resentment attached to it. And every time my son, he was, almost 3 at the time, going through his 2s into 3s, he would freak out. He was in tantrum mode at this point. I would freak out and I would hurt myself. Like I literally, I think twice in front of him, but mostly I would try to walk away. I would physically pull my hair. I would hit my head on things. I would punch myself in the face, like seriously hurt myself. One time I pushed my head into, he has a big boy bed, but he has this like metal sides on it so he doesn't roll off. I pushed myself into it so hard I had a bruise across my forehead. Like I was hurting myself. And through therapy, I learned PTSD, loss of control. That is what happened. It's literally a response in your head because it wouldn't be like, oh, I'm so upset, I need to hurt myself. He would scream, I would lose it, it would happen. I wasn't even thinking about it. All I can say and pray and thank whoever is up there, my spirit guides, God, whoever freaking believe it, that I never hurt my children in that process. It was myself because it could have got really bad. And it happened a lot. And I would lash out on my husband all the time. And then I'd be fine. It was like 3 days off, 1 day fine. 3 days off, which of course would mess with him. And we're currently in couples therapy because of all of this. Because of course I've changed now. But after that, all the same kind of stuff happening, depressive episodes. I got a therapist and she's incredible and she works great with PTSD. So I started working with her a little bit on PTSD. Well, my son got sick with the stomach flu and I always hated throwing up. Knock on wood. I haven't actually thrown up since I was 13 years old and I'm 37. So I'm that person, okay? And I don't know why. I don't remember it being traumatizing. I don't remember it being like horrible. I don't remember anything related to it, right? At this time. I'm like, so my son gets the stomach flu and I freaked the fuck out. Like shaking. I'm talking 5-day panic. I couldn't move. I was horrified of my kids. I broke down. Like my kids would get close to me and I would jump. That's how bad it got. And I told my therapist I had to wait 4 days to talk to her. This happened like Wednesday or something, and I couldn't talk to her till the Monday after. So I don't know how many days that is, however many days it was. And she's she's like, Jackie, you either need to find a psychiatrist right away, you need to check yourself in somewhere, or you need to go to the hospital. She's like, I don't want you to go to the hospital because in Georgia, they automatically have to call CPS when you have suicidal ideation. And she's like, I don't believe you're of harm of your children. So please try to find a psychiatrist. Found a psychiatrist and got put on medication. I was still pumping. Thankfully, it was a month after my daughter turned 1. So I was planning on weaning anyways. And she's like, yeah, you're done. You start this medication today. My psychiatrist and psychologist had a phone call together to make sure that the diagnosis was, matching up. postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, PMDD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And it was just a bomb that went off. If you would have seen me, I was literally like, I couldn't talk. My husband would be like, what's wrong? What could I do for you? I lost 7 pounds in less than a week. I didn't eat. I couldn't be around my son. So he got sick. My husband had to work the next day, of course. And me being like, it was just the beginning of it. I'm bathing my kids and they start crying. And I just had this freak out. My husband was on lunch at work. He was working this weird shift where it was like 2 to 2, but 2 in the afternoon till 2 in the morning. So he wasn't home for dinner time, which is always the craziest with bath time. And he called me and he's like, right in the middle of the kids freaking out. And he's like, how are you doing? And I'm like, horrible. I was crying my eyes out. I went into the kitchen screaming. I had my daughter in her walker and she was screaming. She was safe. My son, he doesn't like take baths. He likes the water running and we call it a shower. So I knew he was safe. I knew they were safe, but I was in the kitchen screaming and pulling my hair out. Like, I can't do this. Why would you leave me at home with them? You know I'm a fucking wreck right now. I can't believe you would do this. He was calling my mom. Like, that's when we realized it was a huge issue. And it literally felt like it took everything in me to get those kids to bed that night. It took everything in me to get those kids to bed that night. Like, literally, like, I'm shaking right now talking about it because it was such a traumatic moment. My brain was on fucking fire. It was like collisions in my brain. Like, there was nothing but explosive anger and depression. And it was the worst anxiety attack I've ever had in my entire life. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get out of a ball in my kitchen. I literally had to crawl back to my kids and keep telling myself, Jacquie, pick yourself the fuck up. Your husband is not home. He is not coming home. Get the fuck off the ground and go take care of your kids. And somehow it happened. And when he got back, he didn't work, he did work the next day, but we hired a babysitter because I just couldn't handle it. And that was another thing that my therapist told me on the Monday. She's like, I really don't think you should be at home with your kids alone right now. Not that I think you're going to hurt them, but just for you can't be around your kids. We had to hire a babysitter when my husband worked, and then he didn't work the next week. And just by some weird coincidence, I had booked a mom's retreat for the weekend after this happened. And I'm talking to my psychiatrist and my therapist, and I'm like, do I go? Like, I don't know if I can even get myself on the plane. Like, I can barely walk to the bathroom right now. And, I had already started my medication. So I was just like, because they put me on Alexa and Klonopin. So I was just like, they had to calm me down. Like, I literally felt like if you've had a panic attack, it was like that 24/7. Like, the first night after he got sick, I literally was like stiff in my bed the whole damn night. I could not loosen myself up. I think I got an hour and a half of sleep that night. And
all because of the vomiting?
Yep. And I'll tell you, it all pieces together. So,
because otherwise, I need you to do hypnotherapy with Jamie, and I need you to go back to your past life that you had some issue with fucking vomiting. Because it all stems from self.
Well, if she had PTSD prior to babies, it would be this life too, I bet.
So my PTSD is from a car accident I was in that I almost died. And it didn't happen and creep up until I was like, the car accident happened when I was 18. I didn't start getting symptoms, like weird symptoms of PTSD. Like, at first it was like, okay, I would watch a movie, there's a car accident, or there would be a car accident somewhere, and I would get like freaked out, like the normal stuff. Nightmares. That's what I call normal PTSD. The weird PTSD, the shit you don't know, was actually PTSD. I would be out to eat in dim lighting and have a panic attack. And I was like, what's going on? And it's because it was triggering my memory. The dim lighting of the car I was in being on fire was triggering in my subconscious, and I would have a panic attack, or a smell. panic attack. So we put that together and I started mindfulness meditation and everything. So I practice meditation all the time now. But after I went on the women's retreat, which was fucking incredible. Like, it was a friend I actually met on Peanut, and she's a life coach, and she, you know, it was her first retreat she put on. So me and a bunch of girls that always talked on Peanut went, and it was an awakening for me. I had always thought about having a podcast. Even all the girls on Peanut were like, you need to start a podcast, because when you give advice, like, I know you're not like a therapist or anything like that, but it comes from your heart and you speak the truth and you don't sugarcoat shit to people, but you're not rude about it. Like, you need to start a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, when the f- am I going to do that? Like, you know, because I'm in this depressive state. I'm like, yeah, sure. No, let me go cry and want to die, you know, 5 seconds. So this retreat, incredible, and weird shit happened to me on this retreat. And I don't know how like woo-woo spiritual you guys are, but like, I'm sitting.
We're the most woo-woo spiritual you can find.
Yeah, we'll go there.
So I'm sitting on the beach. It's 5 a.m. I'm watching the sunrise, drinking my coffee, and I see like one circle. It's like iridescently looking, and I'm like, that's fucking weird. And I was like, oh, it's the sun's reflection. And then I'm like, the sun isn't up yet. And then that like dissipated, and I saw another one, and I was like, okay, that's weird. I'm going fucking crazy. Like, this Klonopin is making me hallucinate, is my original thoughts, right? But I've always like believed in stuff. It's just I never dove into it the way I am now after this retreat because of what happened. So continuing on to the retreat, we do a activity where you take two things that you're insecure about and you try to flip it to see how you can use it for good. Well, my two things were anxiety and my breakdown, right? Because I was going through it. Like, I was crying at the retreat. I was like, I need to be a new person now. Like, this is it. This was my breaking point. Like, I can't go back to this. So everybody's writing down their shit. And the girl that was running the retreat goes, is anybody having trouble? And I was like, me. I don't see what the fuck is good about this. Like, I can't, you know, my head, I was blocked. That's all I could think about was the bad stuff. And she had oracle cards set out. And she's like, why don't you pick an oracle card? And I'm like, well, fuck it. At this point, I'll fucking pick a piece of paper out of a jar. Like, I don't care. I just want help. And the card I picked up was the priestess and her card. And it said, use your, something along the lines of, use your life experiences to help other people. And I was like, the fucking podcast. Like, duh. And then the next day, I had a meeting with a psychic and we were talking and she was like, your hands, every psychic always tells me about my hands. And I'm like, I'm a hairstylist. Yes, I'm creative with your hands. She goes, no, honey. She goes, you're like me. She's like, you can talk to people. You can be open to spirit. You are a healer. And she's like, you need to look more into this in yourself. So I started noticing things. She's like, think back in your life. Anytime your intuition told you not to do something or to do something, that was your spirit guide talking to you. That was absolutely, you know, the universe. That wasn't a coincidence. This is all like, nothing is a coincidence, right? That's what we say in the spiritual community. Nothing's a coincidence in your life. And I thought about it and there was a lot of shit, right? And I just real quick to like tie everything together, she was saying an R name, Ross. Well, I had a friend that passed away, Anthony Ross, and we were really good friends in high school, but he passed away of a drug overdose and I moved and he like begged me to move in with me at one point. And I was like, honey, I can't take care of you. Like, I can barely survive on my own out here. Like, there's no way. And he ended up passing away. And at his funeral, felt fucking horrible because he called me for help, you know? And I talked to his mom and she's like, honey, you couldn't have helped him. Like, he was too far gone, you know? I go home after the funeral because it was in Pittsburgh and I'm getting the chills talking about this right now. And I had a dream about him and he was young, like we were young again. And I was like, oh my God, Tony, like, I can't believe you're here. I'm so sorry. I'm so happy I get to hug you again. Like, it was so emotional. And she was like, okay. And I didn't even tell her any of that, but I had a dream, I had this dream. And she, was like, he keeps telling me like, your birthday was recently, right? And I was like, yeah, it was. The retreat literally was the day after my birthday. And I, out of nowhere, wanted to listen to all my old like metal, screamo, emo shit, which is, what we listened to, me and him. And I have a Cadillac. And the reason I bought a Cadillac was because I remember us smoking pot in his Cadillac when we were like 20 years old. He had his grandfather's 25-year-old fucking Cadillac. You could start it without a key. It was like everything. He was like, she goes, he was with you. Like you felt some weird like bliss. That was him. She was like, you've had dreams about him. And I felt him. Like I swear he's like one of my spirit guides, which scares the shit out of me. But I know like he was like, everybody's funny that knew him in life, because me and probably only one other person will say this. He was a person that his soul was too good for this world, if that makes any sense. Like, he's doing way better where he is now.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I love that you say that, because I think it's so important. And I have this conversation a lot with people about, because loss is hard. When we lose somebody in a physical sense, it's so fucking hard because we miss them. But there are times where, kind of like at your retreat, having to flip a struggle for the positive, sometimes that loss is simply because they can protect us more or do better for us on the flip side, on the spiritual side. It's like they can be more real to us in this lifetime as a helper because we've touched them, we've known them, we've sat in their energy more than a spirit guide that we've never encountered. And I just think that's so, I don't know who needs to hear that, but somebody needs to hear that sometimes loss does result in that. I've personally experienced that. You've experienced that. I don't know about Jamie, but I just think it's so important for people to recognize that sometimes we lose people that are young just so they can protect us more from the other side.
Exactly. So I got back from the retreat. My therapist and my psychiatrist were talking the Monday I was traveling back. So I was at like an airport on the phone with my therapist, making sure she has everything together. And we were talking about all the traumatic things that happened in my life. Well, the first thing I remember, one more story about the retreat before I get here. So we did a child meditation on the retreat, a childhood meditation. And she had us send pictures of us as kids. So I sent her a picture. I was like 3 years old holding a fish. Okay. So I'm thinking that's who's going to pop up in my childhood meditation. But we're going through it. She's going through the meditation. I see myself, my first grade self, and I have the picture. I should like carry it around because I perfectly imagined me in my school picture outfit. It was a puffy, I'm dating myself. Puffy sleeve, pink and white polka dot dress with a big bow on my head. That little girl came out, okay? And then, I don't know if you've done childhood meditations, you like embrace them, you ask them what's wrong, blah, blah, blah. All of them are a little different, but basically all the same, right? And I was like, God, that's so weird. So I'm talking to my psychiatrist or my therapist, okay? So she can go through everything and go through it with my psychiatrist, just taking notes down. What's the first traumatic thing you remember in your life? Well, my mom had a mental breakdown when I was in first grade and I didn't want to go to school. And I would either make myself throw up or pretend I threw up to try to get out of school.
What the fuck, Jackie?
Now,
when you're having a mental breakdown and your kids are throwing up, holy shit, trigger on so many different levels. Okay, I'm sorry. I was flipping my scissors in my hands. For those of you who are watching, it looks a little scary. But oh my God.
Yeah. So that's when we figured out I have a traumatic past. My mom had a mental breakdown when I was, 10. When I was 12, she had a stroke. When I was 15, she had her first round of cancer. Then she almost died in a surgery when I was around 20. another surgery thing happened when I was in my later 20s, and then she had breast cancer again. So every couple years, my mom was deathly ill, sick, and I probably should have went to therapy when I was younger, but it wasn't like that I don't know how old you guys are, but when we were kids, like when I was a kid, people didn't think like that. If you were fine, you were fine. Oh, she's being dramatic, just send her to school. Every day of first grade. And I think about my teacher all the time because I heard it was her first year. And I constantly want to email her and find her and be like, I am so fucking sorry. Like, I hope I was just a broken little child. Like, I am so sorry. But yeah, that was the big aha moment, right? And then I start doing more childhood meditations because you got to dig out. Like, for me, I'm like, I'm not just doing surface work. We're not doing medication and then I just stop at that. So I do more childhood meditation and I'm digging up shit from, middle school, from high school. I realized, in high school, I was, popular. I wasn't like one of the hot people, but I was a cheerleader. I was in, the musicals. I was friends with everybody. And I was also very self-conscious and had no self-esteem. And I had no clue at that time what that even meant,
Are you describing my high school years?
It's just amazing what I learned about myself through having this mental breakdown and the postpartum depression, right? And it was a struggle, and I fought getting put on medication for way too fucking long. Way too fucking long. I was so stubborn. I wanted to do it myself. I had done it myself before, so why couldn't I do it again? That's what I thought. I was just waiting each day. It'll happen. After this meditation, it'll happen. And then you get so depressed, you don't want to meditate anymore. And then you just hate yourself more and more. And I always want to tell people, if you needed the help, get the fucking help. Because my husband said something, the wisest thing this man has ever said. But you have to be selfish to be selfless. And a lot of people, especially mothers, never think that way. And it has helped me through my journey. Like, now I am such a different fucking person, and I am so fucking proud of where I came from. And I will talk about my postpartum depression and my mental breakdown to anybody that wants to hear about it. Anybody. And I share every fucking detail. Me crying on the floors, me wanting to hit my children, me literally running to my room. And I would dig into my face. I had fingernail marks in my damn face that I was covering with makeup. No one knew about this. My husband, that's it. No one knew. He didn't even know for a long time. He'd just be like, oh, okay, or wouldn't notice. Like, because he was in his own crazy state, right?
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, Jackie, I was going to ask, did anybody have any clue throughout child 1, child 2 that any of this? Because I think moms are good at lying and hiding it.
Yes. My husband definitely knew I was depressed. He was a very patient man, and he tried to help the best he knew he could with what he knew. But after, couples therapy and everything, because now I'm a new person, and he's been with this depressed, like I like to say, I know it shouldn't technically be said, psychopath for 3 years, 4 years, right? And so he's getting jumpy when I just talk to him. I'm a loud talker. I'm from the East Coast. I'm not Italian. Tons of Italians. We talk loud. Like, I talk like an Italian person, right? Like, I'm going to say shit, just spit it out. Like, I talk with my hands a lot. It's just what it is. Sometimes it comes off harsh. And when I was in that depressive state, it was me being an ass, right? And me being hormonal and mood swingy. So now I'll say something and there's literally no hatred, negativity, anything behind it. I'm just asking a question. He gets super defensive. And I'm like, babe, no, that's not what I mean. So we have to learn how to be together again because of this. Because I'm a whole new Jackie, literally a whole new Jackie. And I'm like, when I say stuff, I mean it. Whereas before I would say stuff to please him, and then I would call him freaking out because I couldn't handle it. But I'm not like that anymore. So it's been insane. But I have to say, an incredible journey, a freaking incredible journey.
I'm so fucking proud of you for taking that journey and talking about it. Sorry, my ADHD causes me to like pick at my nails when I'm really intensely listening. But talking about that vulnerability, because it isn't easy, and moms do need to hear it, and dads do need to hear it, and they need to understand that that journey is hard. You know, I had said briefly about how I had my daughter at she was like 6 months old, and she wasn't even 6, she was like 3 months old, in a little wrap, and was cutting watermelon over the summertime, and just saw myself taking that giant, huge knife and just stabbing it into her head. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck was that? Like, it scared the shit out of me. And I was so ashamed to say anything. And I'm a mental health therapist. And even at that time, didn't recognize that that was postpartum. And that's something that we learn from other moms. We learn from other people who are vulnerable and saying, hey, this is what happened to me, and this is what this is. And I wouldn't have recognized it because I don't work in postpartum as a therapist, I wouldn't have recognized it had a cousin of mine not said, oh, I struggled with postpartum. That was postpartum. But I felt safe enough to be vulnerable with her to be like, what the fuck? Like, I don't actually want to harm my child, but Jesus Christ, that scared the shit out of me. I had to put the knife down. I was so scared. I had to walk away and be like, whoa, I need to call an adult. I need a grown up in this situation. But you don't realize, and you just being vulnerable.
And it's helpful for listeners to know, because I think people just think postpartum depression, like, you know, they're just depressed, they're just sad, they're just crying, or they're overwhelmed. And it's important for everyone to understand moms are probably going to hide it. They're probably going to lie. You know, they're probably ashamed and scared themselves. So, you know, just learning what it could look like to even gently ask these questions, because, you know, listeners don't know, but when we were previously talking about friendships and parenthood, it's like, whether you're a parent or not, but if you're a friend and an ally to like a mom, and it doesn't even have to be a new mom, like it, because there's also, fun fact, like there's postpartum depression, but that happens after the baby's a baby, like when they're grown and when they're older. And so it's just important to know that no matter the age of this child, ask your parent friends, like, truly, how are they doing? Like, are you struggling? Are you frustrated? Do you feel overwhelmed? Is there anything that would make your life easier? Like, I mean, I don't know, Jackie, could you even describe, like, what do you think would have been like 3% helpful if someone would have just either reached out or said or done something, you know?
I think my advice for somebody that has somebody that was in my position is don't even ask what they need. Just give them what they need, if that makes sense. Don't give anybody a choice, because it's awkward. Somebody's like, oh, tell me when you need something and I'll give it to you. Say, hey, on Friday, I'm going to order you food. Where do you want it from? And I'm going to send it to you. Or, hey, I'm going to come over and watch your kids. What day do you want me there? You know, you go rest, go take a 2-hour shower, go for a walk, go do whatever you need to do. Like, don't offer it like as in, just, I'm doing this for you. So when can we do it?
Or I'm going to come and they just show up so they can't clean. Be like, I don't want you to clean your house. Like, I'm here. Go upstairs and shower.
And this one that somebody had told me, and I loved this so much. It was, I just went to my friend's house and I just grabbed their laundry and just brought it out. And they were like, no. And I just started folding it. Like, and this isn't me speaking because I'm not that badass. Somebody else told me this story. But I love that idea of, like, if somebody, I'm going to tell somebody, no, don't fold my laundry, because that feels vulnerable. But if somebody folded my laundry, I'd be like, fuck yeah, thank you. It's just, a huge burden off my plate.
Yeah.
And doing so without judgment. You know, Jackie, like you said, just let me be me. I can say, you know, you rely on your husband so much in those vulnerable moments. And with my 3 children that I birthed, I couldn't breastfeed with each one of them for NICU, for tongue tie, for jaundice, whatever reasons, or maybe my fucking boobs. I don't know. Maybe my boobs are the problem the whole time. I don't know. But at about 2.5 weeks, every single time I would break down and sob and be a mess. And my husband would always get frustrated with me because it's like he didn't know how to handle that vulnerability. And I just needed him to just be like, yeah, it's okay to be fucking sad. And it's okay to feel like a failure. And it's okay to feel like you have totally betrayed your children because your body isn't doing what you want it to do. And I just would have that same message for everybody who's dealing with things, whether it's 2.5 weeks, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, whatever it is. Just let moms feel what they need to fucking feel without judgment, because it is hard. It is so hard. Just allow it. And allow the dads to feel it. But dads, don't panic that the moms are feeling big feelings. It's not a failure for you. Not a failure on them. It's just what it is. It's just a feeling. That's it.
Yeah, and it was kind of shocking how many people didn't say anything. Like, they were judging what I was doing instead of jumping in and being like, are you depressed? Or saying to my husband, maybe Jackie has postpartum depression. Like, no one did that. Everyone would just judge. Like, I remember after my first was born, the doctor told me, like, don't let anybody around your kid that hasn't had like a whooping cough shot, I think it is. So my sister is terrified of shots. And we had this huge blowout fight. And I said something, I didn't mention her, but I said, like, on Facebook or something, I posted how many people had visitors get a whooping cough shot before they stayed the night with their kids. And people were commenting, yeah, it's necessary or whatever. And my sister freaked the fuck out. And then somebody else in the family, who I won't name, messaged my husband and was like, Jackie's saying all this stuff on Facebook and it's embarrassing the family. And I was just like, no support.
Especially when your whole agenda in that scenario was the protection of your children. Like, it wasn't a judgment of anybody. It was literally the protection of your children. That was it.
Yeah.
But there are some people, especially like, oh my God, calm your tits, people. Number one, if you take anything away from this, calm your motherfucking tits and don't take everything personal.
Well, and just, you know, as I think most moms are all just trying their best to keep their kids alive. So that's why anytime any mom is like, I think I'm going to do this, or I currently do this, I'm like, yeah, do it, girlfriend. Like, just be on their fucking side. I think that's all most moms want, is just someone to be on their side and not judge them. Because that is why if you get judged for like something like asking people to get the whooping cough vaccine, or asking people to wash their hands before they hold the baby, or asking people like, this is what I'm doing for my baby. If they can't respect that, then of course they're not a safe person to talk to when you're freaking the fuck out in your kitchen, you know? And it all is the same thing.
I was looking at my phone because I remember I had one of the something that I posted, and this was a year after I had my kid, a little over a year after. And this was one of the things that people were freaking out about. And I can I share it on here?
Yeah, do it.
It was a Facebook post. It's from October 12th, 2020. And it's weird because I actually screenshotted it on October 13th. I went back and found it. Anyways, it says, after having a child, I seriously feel like my soul was sucked out of my old body, stored in a new body, and it's hidden behind a pit of new obstacles that I have to overcome at least once a week, whether it be physical or mental. I am different and no one prepares you for how much you will change. Hormones are the devil's bitch. People that don't know will never understand the struggle of becoming a mother. Do not expect me to ever be the same. Do not expect me to put up with any bullshit because I have enough of that going on that I can't control. I do not expect me to show up if you are not showing up or have let me down repeatedly in the past. I'm still healing a fucking year later. Who the hell am I? Where is all the support I thought I'd have? Why is this the hardest yet most beautiful thing I've ever done in my life? Why does my body have to be tortured to feel the most exquisite love I've ever felt in my life? Why am I still thinking about having another one after all of this? Fuck.
God, that's incredible, because that does describe the journey so eloquently. It's this weird, like, back and forth of, I don't know who the fuck I am, but I know who I am. I don't know how I feel, but I know how I feel. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I do. It's weird. It's so, parenting is a fucking mind fuck. And honestly, I truly think that we become parents simply because we want to challenge our souls on a different level. Honestly, because that's what kids do.
Yeah, they definitely do.
I mean, I could choose to not have a kid and I could put everything into my work. And, you know, because I do a lot of work with my experience with my mom growing up and her mental illness. Sure, yeah. But that's not what my soul decided to do. My soul thought, oh, let's have 4 kids and let's figure that out while you're trying to work, you know, whatever. It's a blessing. It truly is. Kids are magical. They're so incredible. And really, we're so grateful. No matter how hard it is.
I remember after I went to the women's retreat or the mom's retreat and came back, I wasn't afraid of my kids, but I was still a little weirded out, and it took a little time. And there was a day where I was going to the bathroom and my son burst through the door, as they do, right? And he said something silly and my heart just like lit up. I said it was like the Grinch where your heart grows. And I was like, this is a mom feeling. And then I started to cry because I was like, he's 3 and I just felt this for the first time in my entire life. And I felt guilty because I was like, I've been missing out on this for so long because I was so stubborn. And if by chance I should get pregnant again, my husband has a vasectomy. There will be words with a doctor if that happens. I will be on drugs. Whatever is safe to take when I'm pregnant, I'm not taking any chances. There's no way in hell I'm going back there because I don't regret anything because it brought me to where I am now. And I feel more focused and happy and put together than ever. But it took me literally falling to pieces. And that happens in a lot of people's spiritual journeys. When you're falling apart is when everything starts to open up with that kind of stuff. And it really has opened up for me. And it's been nothing but beautiful.
And remember, your kids chose you. Their soul chose you to teach them what they needed to learn in order to fulfill what they need to fulfill on this life journey, just as you chose your parents. So the lessons, and it's hard to sit in that as a parent, looking back, knowing that there are moments where you're like I full on yelled at my son when he was 3, like he was a grown ass adult because he wouldn't potty train. Because I felt pressure from the outside world, and I still feel really guilty about it. But at the same time, I have to sit in that knowing that he chose me for a reason, and I'm going to make mistakes. He's going to make mistakes, and we just have to walk this journey together, and that is what it is. And that's the beauty of all of it, really. Mm-hmm. You didn't fail. You're doing the best you can with what you know.
And I'm hoping that my podcast and being on other people's podcasts will help other moms. And so they hear my story and they feel it. They can maybe notice it way earlier and not do the same thing that I did, or not feel so alone in it, and, you know, just help people through that. I actually want to start speaking publicly about this as well. I'm going to start to look around me, like what mothers groups can I go to, or can I go even to the hospital programs, which I know they don't want to freak mothers out, but talk to me about postpartum depression, or even start a local support group for mothers with postpartum depression, like anything to help, because I did not have that help. I also wasn't looking for the help, but when you're in that state, it's like you have 1,000-pound weight on your shoulders and you can't lift yourself up. You really can't. Like, it took me like that explosive being scared of my children. Like, that is the most horrifying thing. And I've said it again and again in all the podcasts I do, but I was afraid of my fucking kids. Like, as a mother, that is the worst feeling you can ever feel in your life, is being afraid of your kids for no reason at all. It's not like they hurt me. It's not like they're an adult and they hurt me, you know, like these little babies that needed me and I could not even be around them.
I didn't frame that though, because there was a reason. It just may not have been a logical reason. There's a reason based in your own trauma, in your own pain, in your own fear, in your own unprocessed pain. There is a reason. It just didn't make sense in that moment, but the body has a memory.
Yeah.
So Jamie, do you want to do our mugs really quick?
Yes. Mine is thrilled to be here. Well, maybe that just sums up parenthood. You can be thrilled as in like, woo, exciting, or thrilled as in, I've been on a roller coaster and I might die, but we're just thrilled to be here.
I like it. Jackie, do you want to try to do your one or the other?
I don't. Let's do this. And we'll say, this is my blank slate. This is the new me that I love, because it's white and white represents purity. And I mean, I'm definitely not pure, but you know, spirituality, let's just say clear slate, everything love and light after this. So
I love that. So for those of you not listening, her mug is just pure white, which is beautiful. I love what you said, Jackie. So mine is yellow and it says the big cheese. I think sometimes as moms, we dismiss ourselves. We dismiss our own needs. We dismiss how awesome we are in everything that we are juggling and everything that we're trying to do. And I just want to say, we truly are the big motherfucking cheese. We're the badass. We're the bonus that makes every situation better. You know, there's something to that mom kiss. There's something to that mom hug. There's something, you know, when you cry and you're upset, even as a grown up, as a teenager, and you need your mom, it's because we're the big fucking cheese. Even when we think that we aren't, we always are at the end of the day. So that's all I have to say about that.
yeah.
Jackie, thank you so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable and teaching any wave of new parenting that these are things you just need to know. It's just being realistic and honest. So truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Honestly, your vulnerability is incredible. And I'm excited to see what you do moving forward. Because there's so many moms that need to hear this, you know, and you just happen to be brave enough to share it. And that's incredibly huge. I don't want you to ever undervalue that.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So thank you so much. Thank you so much to our viewers. Thank you for all your likes, shares, and subscribes. We love you guys so much. And we could not do this without you. So don't forget, we're here every Wednesday, and bye.
Bye.
If you think we're cool,
Or even if you don't,
please like or subscribe so you'll stay up to date on all things The Shrink Show.
thank you for choosing to spend a portion of your life with us. And remember, don't take yourself too seriously. Life is all a giant shrink show.
a Huda Media production.
Side effects of listening to this podcast may include side aches or snorting from laughter, impromptu jazz hands, nodding in agreement even though you might be listening alone, an occasional "you said it, girl," and mild cases of existential dread. This podcast is strictly for entertainment and informative purposes only and is not intended or implied to diagnose, treat, or otherwise substitute for professional mental health, medical, legal, or other advice. Thank you.